The heavy door to my son's home closed behind me with a final thud as I stepped out into the crisp October air. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip my purse. The words still echoed in my head, sharp and cutting like broken glass. "The best gift for my birthday would be if you died, Mom." My name is Margaret Wilson. I'm 78 years old, a retired elementary school teacher, and until today, I thought I understood what heartbreak meant. I've lived through my husband's death 15 years ago, survived breast cancer at 65, and weathered countless storms that come with nearly 8 decades on this earth. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for hearing those words from my only child, the boy I had given everything to since the moment he was placed in my arms. I somehow managed to get into my old Buick, a reliable companion for the last 12 years. The interior still smelled faintly of the lavender air freshener I'd hung from the rearview mirror last week. Such a small, ordinary detail. How strange that I would notice it now when my world was collapsing. I sat there for nearly 10 minutes, unable to turn the key in the ignition, unable to drive away from Robert's house, a sprawling 4,500 square foot home in one of Boston's most exclusive suburbs, a home that wouldn't exist without the $75,000 I'd given him and Diana for the down payment 7 years ago. Money from selling the family home where I'd raised him, money that should have secured my retirement. The tears finally came as I pulled away from the curb, flowing hot and fast down my cheeks. Not dainty, dignified tears, but ugly, heaving sobs that made it difficult to see the road. I had to pull over twice before I reached my apartment, a modest 2-bedroom unit in a senior living complex that was all I could afford after a lifetime of giving everything to my son. What had I done to deserve this? What mother deserves to hear her child wish for her death? I trudged up the stairs to my second-floor apartment, each step feeling like I was climbing a mountain. The hallway seemed longer than usual, stretching out before me like an endless tunnel. When I finally unlocked my door and stepped inside, the silence enveloped me like a shroud. This small apartment was nothing like the beautiful Victorian home I'd shared with my late husband, James. That house had been filled with laughter, with memories, with the warmth of family gatherings. This place was just empty, a temporary stop on the way to whatever end awaited me. At least, that's how I'd always thought of it. A sacrifice made willingly for Robert's benefit. I sank onto my worn floral sofa, still wearing my coat, my purse clutched tightly to my chest like a shield. The birthday gift I'd bought for Robert, an expensive watch he'd been hinting about for months, was still inside, wrapped in silver paper with a blue bow. $350 I couldn't afford to spend, charged to a credit card I was already struggling to pay off. "The best gift would be if you died, Mom." The words replayed in my mind over and over, like a record with a scratch that wouldn't stop, skipping back to the same terrible line of a song. How had we gotten here? When had my sweet little boy, who used to climb into my lap for stories and bring me dandelion bouquets, turned into this cold, cruel stranger? I forced myself to stand up, to remove my coat, to place my purse on the small table by the door where it always went. Routine, structure, the habits of a lifetime. These would carry me through, even if my heart was shattered into 1,000 pieces. As I moved mechanically through my evening rituals, heating soup I didn't want to eat, changing into night clothes though it was barely 6 p.m., my mind kept returning to this afternoon's events, searching for some explanation, some reason that might make the pain more bearable. Robert had invited me to his home for an early celebration of his upcoming 48th birthday. I'd arrived at 2 p.m. as requested, carrying a homemade carrot cake, his favorite since childhood, and the carefully wrapped watch. Diana had greeted me at the door with her usual thin-lipped smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Margaret," she'd said. Not mom or even mother-in-law. Just Margaret, like I was a distant acquaintance. "Robert's in his study. He'll be out shortly." She'd taken the cake from my hands without comment and disappeared into the kitchen, leaving me standing alone in the enormous foyer with its marble floors and crystal chandelier. I'd made my way to the living room, where I sat perched on the edge of an uncomfortable designer sofa that probably cost more than 6 months of my pension. The twins, my 12-year-old grandchildren Emma and Ethan, had barely looked up from their tablets to acknowledge my presence. "Hello, darlings," I'd said, holding out my arms, hopefully. "Grandma could use a hug." Emma had given me a quick, perfunctory embrace, while Ethan had just waved from across the room. "Can't pause the game, Grandma," he'd muttered, eyes never leaving the screen. When Robert finally emerged from his study 30 minutes later, he'd seemed irritated to find me there, as if my presence was an unwelcome interruption rather than the purpose of the gathering. "Oh, Mom, you're early," he'd said, though I'd arrived precisely when asked. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I'd replied, choosing to ignore the slight. "I brought your favorite cake." The afternoon had deteriorated from there. Robert spent most of the time checking his phone. Diana made several pointed comments about people who know when to leave and not becoming a burden in one's old age. The twins had been excused to go to friends' houses shortly after a quick, silent cake cutting. And then, as I was preparing to leave, I'd given Robert the watch. He'd opened it with obvious disinterest, barely glancing at the timepiece I'd spent hours selecting. "Another watch, Mom? I have dozens." "But you mentioned this one specifically, remember? When we saw it in the mall last month." He'd sighed heavily. "That was the limited edition Breitling, Mom. This is, well, it's not the same thing at all." I had felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment. The watch I'd bought was the most expensive I could possibly afford, a $350 Seiko that the salesperson had assured me was a very respectable timepiece. The one Robert had wanted cost over "I'm sorry," I'd said softly. "I thought—" "That's the problem, Mom," he'd interrupted, his voice sharp. "You don't think. You just show up here with your discount store gifts and your homemade cakes like it's 19. The cruelty of his words had stolen my breath. "Robert," I'd whispered, "I don't understand. What's happened to you? To us?" "Nothing's happened, Mom. This is just how it is. I've outgrown this." He gestured vaguely toward me, encompassing my modest dress, my aging face, my entire existence in one dismissive wave. "But I'm your mother. I've always—" "Always what?" "Always interfered, always judged, always reminded me how much I owe you. God, Mom, do you know how exhausting it is to have you constantly hovering, constantly needing? The calls, the visits, the expectations." Tears had filled my eyes. "I don't understand," I'd repeated, my voice breaking. Robert's face had hardened then, a coldness entering his eyes that I'd never seen before. "You want to know what I really want for my birthday this year, Mom? Peace, quiet, freedom from your constant emotional neediness. Robert, please. The best gift would be if you died, Mom. Then we'd all finally be free." The words had hit me like a physical blow. I'd staggered backward, clutching the edge of a side table to keep from falling. Robert hadn't moved to help me. He just stood there, watching, his expression somewhere between contempt and impatience. I don't remember leaving. Don't remember what, if anything, I said in response. The next clear memory I have is sitting in my car outside his house, unable to turn the key. Now, as I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, sleep a distant impossibility, I found myself doing something I'd never done before, calculating exactly how much I had given to my son over the years. Not just love and time and emotional support, those immeasurable gifts that parents give freely, but cold, hard cash. There was the $75,000 for the house down payment, the $42,000 for Robert's graduate school, which he'd promised to pay back but never did, the $28,000 for the twins' private elementary school tuition last year, when Robert complained that his bonus wasn't as large as expected, the $15,000 for Diana's emergency plastic surgery 3 years ago, the monthly checks of $200, $500 whenever Robert called with yet another unexpected expense. For the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge a painful truth. I had enabled this, my desire to be needed, to be important in my son's life, had turned me into an ATM rather than a mother. And now, even that role was no longer wanted. As the first gray light of dawn filtered through my curtains, I made a decision. I would not allow my son's cruel words to destroy me. Instead, I would use them as a catalyst for the change I should have made years ago. If Robert wished I were dead, I would grant his wish in a manner of speaking. Margaret Wilson, the forever giving, eternally forgiving, endlessly exploited mother, would cease to exist. In her place would arise a woman who valued herself, who protected her own interests, who lived for her own joy. It was time to disappear from Robert's life, just as he wanted. But unlike the death he'd so callously wished for, this disappearance would bring me rebirth, not end. With newfound determination, I pulled myself out of bed. There was much to be done if I was going to start a new life at 78. But first, I needed coffee, strong coffee. This was going to be a very long day. I'd never been a woman who made hasty decisions. Teaching third graders for 42 years had instilled in me a methodical approach to problems, a careful weighing of options before taking action, so while my heart wanted immediate escape, my head knew I needed a plan. At my small kitchen table, I began making lists. First, a financial accounting of my current situation, monthly income from pension and Social Security, 28,800 savings account balance, 18 in 4032 doll. Checking account balance 12 in 45 DD. To 1K balance $215,000. Largely untouched due to helping Robert credit card debt. Next, I listed the financial ties between Robert and me. Joint checking account with $8,700 emergency fund I maintained for him. Cosigner on his home equity line of credit, $150,000 available, $95,000 currently used. Automatic monthly transfer of $300 to his account for grandchildren's activities. Named beneficiary on all my accounts and insurance policies. Power of attorney for medical and financial decisions. Seeing it all written down like this made me feel physically ill. I had completely entangled my financial life with my son's, placing myself in a vulnerable position while giving him enormous power over my future. If I became seriously ill or incapacitated, Robert would control everything, a thought that now sent chills down my spine. What would happen if I severed these connections? If I reclaimed my financial independence? If I disappeared from Robert's life as completely as he seemed to want, I knew there would be immediate consequences for him. Without my monthly contributions, without the security of knowing I would bail him out of any financial difficulty, Robert and Diana might have to adjust their lavish lifestyle. The thought brought me not satisfaction, but a strange sense of rightness, as if I was finally correcting a long-standing imbalance. By mid-morning, I had a rough plan in place. I would need to visit my bank, my attorney, and perhaps a financial advisor. I would need to find a new place to live, somewhere Robert wouldn't think to look for me. And I would need to do all of this quickly, before my resolve weakened or Robert realized what was happening. I picked up my phone and, for the first time in our relationship, blocked Robert's number. Then I blocked Diana's. After a moment's hesitation, I blocked the home phone as well. The relief I felt was immediate and startling. I hadn't realized how much anxiety each ring of the phone had caused me, how much dread I felt when Robert's name appeared on my screen, knowing it almost certainly meant another request I couldn't afford to fulfill. Next, I called my oldest friend, Eleanor Green. Eleanor and I had started teaching at the same elementary solely in 1968 and had remained close even after she moved to Florida following her retirement 12 years ago. "Maggie," she exclaimed when she answered. "What a lovely surprise. How are you, dear?" The simple kindness in her voice nearly undid me. "Not good, Ellie," I admitted, my voice catching. "Actually, terrible." "What's happened? Are you ill?" "No, not physically. It's Robert. I couldn't bring myself to repeat his exact words. He told me he wishes I were dead." Eleanor's sharp intake of breath was followed by a stream of outraged exclamations. "That ungrateful, horrible, after everything you've done for him. Maggie, I've been telling you for years that boy is taking advantage of you. But this is beyond anything I could have imagined." "I know," I said quietly, "and you were right all along. I've been a fool." "Not a fool," Eleanor corrected firmly. "A loving mother who wanted to believe the best of her child. There's no shame in that." "Maybe not. But there would be shame in continuing to allow it." I took a deep breath. "Ellie, I'm going to make some big changes. I'm going to disappear from Robert's life." "What exactly do you mean by disappear?" "I mean, I'm going to cut all financial ties, move away, and start over somewhere. He can't find me, at least for a while." There was a long pause before Eleanor spoke again. "Maggie Wilson, are you telling me that at 78 years old you're finally going to put yourself first?" "Yes," I said, surprised at the strength in my voice. "That's exactly what I'm telling you." "Well, hallelujah and praise the Lord. It's about damn time." Eleanor's delighted laughter filled the line. "And I know exactly where you should come. Right here to Sarasota. The weather's gorgeous, there's a wonderful community of active seniors, and most importantly, I have a guest room with your name on it until you find your own place." A weight I hadn't realized I was carrying suddenly lifted from my shoulders. Having a destination, a friendly face waiting for me, made the terrifying prospect of starting over feel almost possible. "Are you sure, Ellie? This isn't just a short visit I'm talking about." "Positive. In fact, I insist. The retirement community where I live has several units coming available next month. We could be neighbors. Just imagine martinis on the lanai, water aerobics in the morning, book club on Thursdays. Maggie, we could have the retirement we always talked about back when we were young teachers dreaming of our golden years." For the first time since Robert's cruel declaration, I felt a spark of genuine excitement. Eleanor and I had indeed spent many lunch breaks in the teacher's lounge fantasizing about retiring to Florida, sharing a condo near the beach, spending our days reading novels and our evenings playing canasta. Life had taken us in different directions, but perhaps it wasn't too late to reclaim that dream. "I'll need some time to get my affairs in order," I said, already mentally listing what needed to be done. "Of course. How long do you think?" I considered the question. 2 weeks. I'll need to see my lawyer, close accounts, pack what matters, and sell or donate the rest." "Perfect. That gives me time to freshen up the guest room and stock up on your favorite wine." "Oh, Maggie, I'm so excited. I'm sorry about the circumstances, of course, but I've missed you terribly." "I've missed you too, Ellie, more than I realized until this moment." After our call ended, I sat holding the phone, a strange sensation bubbling up inside me. It took a few seconds to identify it. So long had it been since I'd experienced it. Hope, despite the pain, despite the heartbreak, I felt hope for my future. A future that, for the first time in decades, would be shaped by my desires, not by Robert's demands. I glanced at the clock. It was just past 10 in the morning. The banks would be open. It was time to take the first concrete step in my new life. I dressed with unusual care, choosing a tailored navy pantsuit I normally saved for special occasions. If I was going to reclaim control of my financial life, I wanted to look the part, competent, dignified, not like someone who could be easily dismissed or manipulated. The First National Bank of Boston branch near my apartment was quiet on this Tuesday morning. I walked directly to the manager's office, a place I'd visited often during the difficult months after James died, when I'd been learning to manage our finances alone. "Mrs. Wilson," Mr. Patterson rose to greet me, his handshake warm and firm. "It's been quite a while. What can I help you with today?" "I need to make some significant changes to my accounts, Mr. Patterson, including closing a joint account I hold with my son." If he was surprised, he didn't show it. "Of course. Let's look at your accounts and discuss your options." Over the next hour, I systematically dismantled the financial connections between Robert and me. I closed our joint checking account, transferring the $8,700 into my personal account. I removed his name as a beneficiary on my bank accounts, replacing him with a scholarship fund at the elementary school where I'd taught for so many years. I canceled the automatic monthly transfer that sent $300 to his account. "There's one more thing," I said, once those changes were complete. "I'm co-signer on my son's home equity line of credit. I'd like to remove myself from that obligation if possible." Mr. Patterson's expression turned serious. "That's a bit more complicated, Mrs. Wilson. As a co-signer, you can't unilaterally remove yourself from the agreement. Both parties would need to consent, and the bank would need to approve the change." My heart sank. "I see. And if my son doesn't consent, then you would remain legally responsible for the debt." He hesitated before continuing. "However, there are some options we could explore. Given that your son has used $95,000 of the available $50,000 line of credit, and given your role as co-signer, you do have certain rights. You could request that the line of credit be frozen to prevent additional borrowing." "Yes," I said immediately. "I'd like to do that. You should know that your son will be notified of this change." I nodded, my resolve firm. "I understand." By the time I left the bank, I had effectively severed most of the financial ties binding me to Robert. The home equity line of credit remained a concern, but at least no additional debt could be added. It was a start. My next stop was the office of Harriet Klein, the attorney who had helped James and me prepare our wills years ago. Unlike Mr. Patterson, Harriet did not hide her surprise at my requests. "You want to completely revoke your son's power of attorney? And remove him as the executor of your will?" Her eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. "Margaret, these are significant changes. May I ask what's prompted them?" I'd known Harriet for over 20 years. She deserved honesty. My son told me the best birthday gift I could give him would be my death. Harriet's professional composure cracked. "He what?" "You heard me correctly." I kept my voice steady, though the words still felt like glass in my throat. "I've spent decades sacrificing my financial security for Robert's benefit. Yesterday, I discovered that despite everything I've given, he sees me as nothing but a burden. So yes, I want to revoke his power of attorney, remove him as my executor and beneficiary, and ensure he has no legal control over me or my assets." Harriet removed her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. "Margaret, I'm so sorry. There are no words." "Thank you, but I don't need sympathy right now. I need action." She nodded briskly, professionalism reasserting itself. "Of course, we can absolutely make these changes. In fact, given what you've told me, I strongly recommend we do so immediately." She began typing on her computer. "Who would you like to designate as your new power of attorney?" I'd given this considerable thought. "Eleanor Green. She's my oldest friend, completely trustworthy and has no connection to Robert. And as executor and beneficiary of your will?" "For executor, Eleanor as well. As for beneficiaries," I paused, considering, "I'd like to establish several charitable bequests. The elementary school where I taught, perhaps a scholarship for aspiring teachers, the women's shelter downtown, the literacy program at the public library." Harriet's fingers flew across the keyboard. "All excellent choices. We can work out the specific allocations and percentages during our meeting. Would you like to retain any bequests to your grandchildren?" I thought of Emma and Ethan, so absorbed in their electronic devices they could barely look at me. They were children, yes, but children being raised by parents who saw nothing wrong with wishing death upon a grandmother. What values were they learning? Still, they were my blood. Yes, I decided, a modest educational trust for each of them, accessible when they turn 25. But I want it structured in a way that Robert and Diana cannot access or control those funds under any circumstances. We can absolutely do that. Now let's talk about your living will and healthcare directive. By the time I left Harriet's office 3 hours later, I had completely restructured my legal affairs. No longer would Robert have any say over my medical care, my finances, or the distribution of my assets after my death. The documents would take a few days to prepare, but Harriet promised to expedite the process given the circumstances. As I walked back to my car, my phone rang. It was Robert. Despite having blocked his number, he was somehow calling through. I silenced the phone without answering. A moment later, a voicemail notification appeared. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. I played the message.
"Mom, it's me."
Robert's voice was tight with annoyance. "The bank just called. What the hell do you think you're doing? Freezing my line of credit? Closing our joint account? I was counting on that money." I deleted the message before he could finish, a strange calm washing over me. Not once in his message had he expressed concern for me, asked where I was, or mentioned our confrontation yesterday. His only concern was the money. It was all the confirmation I needed that I was making the right choice. By evening, exhaustion had settled into my bones. The emotional and physical toll of the day left me barely able to climb the stairs to my apartment. Yet despite the fatigue, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: pride. I had taken control of my life today. I had stood up for myself, protected my interests, and set boundaries that should have been established long ago. As I prepared for bed, my phone rang again. This time, it was Diana calling from her cell phone. I didn't answer. Another voicemail followed. "Margaret, this is Diana." Her voice dripped with artificial sweetness. "There seems to be some confusion with the bank. Robert is very upset. Whatever misunderstanding has occurred, I'm sure we can work it out as a family. Please call us back as soon as possible." I deleted this message too, unmoved by Diana's sudden desire for family harmony. For years, she had treated me with thinly veiled contempt, canceling visits with the grandchildren at the last minute, making disparaging comments about my clothes, my apartment, my very existence. Now that the financial tap was being turned off, she was all concern and conciliation. Too late. As I slipped between the sheets of my bed, I realized something startling. I hadn't felt this peaceful in years. The constant anxiety about Robert's next demand, the perpetual guilt when I couldn't meet his expectations, the chronic worry about his approval, all of it had vanished, replaced by a singular focus on my own well-being. "The best gift would be if you died, Mom." The words still hurt, a deep wound that would likely never fully heal. But they had also freed me. In wishing for my death, Robert had inadvertently given me permission to start living. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, searching for a new place to live, deciding what to take and what leave behind, booking travel to Florida. But for tonight, I allowed myself to simply rest, secure in the knowledge that I was at long last on the right path. As I drifted off to sleep, I found myself imagining the Florida sunshine, the sound of waves on the beach, Eleanor's laughter over morning coffee. For the first time in years, I looked forward to the future, my future with genuine anticipation. This was just the beginning. The next morning, I awoke to find 12 missed calls on my phone, 5 from Robert, 4 from Diana, 2 from numbers I didn't recognize, and 1 from the twins' school. I didn't listen to any of the voicemails. Instead, I blocked Diana's number and the unknown ones, then made myself a strong cup of coffee and got to work. My first task was to make a detailed inventory of everything I owned. The apartment came furnished, so most of the large pieces, the sofa, dining table, bed, weren't mine to take or sell. My personal possessions were relatively few: clothes, books, a small collection of artwork, my grandmother's china, photo albums, and various mementos from a lifetime of teaching and family events. Looking around the apartment with fresh eyes, I realized how little I actually needed or truly valued. Why was I holding on to a closet full of formal outfits I never wore? Why keep 15 mixing bowls when I only ever used 3? Why preserve Robert's childhood report cards and art projects when he had made it brutally clear that sentimentality meant nothing to him? I began sorting everything into 4 categories: take to Florida, sell, donate, and trash. It was a surprisingly liberating process. Each item I decided to leave behind felt like shedding another pound of unnecessary weight. By midday, I had filled 3 large garbage bags with things to throw away and designated 5 boxes of items for donation. My keep pile was notably small, some favorite books, a few cherished photographs, though none recent, the quilt my mother had made for my wedding, my most comfortable casual clothes, and a handful of treasured keepsakes. The doorbell rang just as I was sealing a box of kitchen items for donation. I froze, heart suddenly racing. Was it Robert? Had he come to confront me in person? Cautiously, I approached the door and peered through the peephole. It wasn't Robert, but my neighbor Sofia Petrovich, an 82-year-old Ukrainian immigrant with whom I developed a friendly relationship over morning encounters at the building's mailboxes. I opened the door, relief washing over me. "Sophia, hello." "Margaret, good day." Her accent was still thick, despite 50 years in America. "I see you not get mail yesterday or today. Everything okay?" I hesitated. Sophia was kind and trustworthy, but I wasn't ready to share my full situation. "I've been busy sorting through some things. Actually, I'm planning a move." Sophia's eyes widened. "Move? Where you go?" "Florida, to be near an old friend." "Florida." She clapped her hands together. "Sunshine State, very good for old bones. When you leave?" "Soon, in about 2 weeks." She nodded approvingly. "Smart lady. Winter coming here. Too cold for us old people." She peered past me into the apartment, noting the boxes and bags. "You need help packing? My grandson Nikolai, very strong, can carry boxes." "That's very kind, but I think I'll manage. I'm not taking much." Sophia studied my face, her eyes shrewd and perceptive. "Something happened, yes? With your son?" I flinched involuntarily. How did she know? "I see how he visit less and less," she continued. "How he take, never give, not good son." She patted my arm sympathetically. "My Alexei same way before I put foot down. Now he know better." Her simple understanding brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "It's complicated," I managed to say. "Always complicated with children," Sophia agreed. "But you do right thing. New start in Florida. Very good." She reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a small tin. "Cookies. Almond. I make this morning. You eat, get strength." I accepted the tin, touched by her kindness. "Thank you, Sophia. I not tell anyone you go," she promised. "If son come looking, I know nothing." After Sophia left, I sat at my kitchen table eating one of her delicious cookies and pondering her words. How obvious had Robert's neglect and exploitation been that even my neighbor had noticed? Had everyone seen what I had been blind to for so long? The thought was both humiliating and oddly comforting. Perhaps I wasn't crazy for feeling used. Perhaps others would understand my decision to leave. My phone rang again. Robert for the 6th time that day. I silenced it and returned to my sorting, newly energized by Sophia's support and her delicious cookies, which indeed seemed to give me strength. By evening, I had nearly completed the initial sorting of my possessions. The apartment looked bare, most surfaces cleared of the photographs and mementos that had previously crowded them. I found I didn't miss these things. In fact, the space felt lighter, airier, as if it too was breathing more freely, without the weight of the past. I was about to prepare a simple dinner when someone pounded loudly on my door. The aggressive sound left no doubt about who it was. "Mom, I know you're in there. Open the door." Robert's voice, tight with anger. I stood frozen in the middle of my living room, heart hammering in my chest. I had known this confrontation was inevitable, but I wasn't ready. Not yet, not when my plan was still incomplete. "Mom, the building manager told me you're home. Open this door right now." I remained silent, barely breathing. Would he try to force his way in? Would he make a scene in the hallway? Either seemed possible, given the rage in his voice. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "You can't just cut me off without any explanation. What about the twins' school fees? What about the home equity payment that's due next week? We had an understanding, Mom." Yes, we certainly did, I thought bitterly. I understood that I was nothing but a convenient source of funding to you. The pounding continued for several more minutes, accompanied by threats and demands. Finally, it stopped. I heard Robert's footsteps stomping down the hallway, followed by the distant slam of the building's front door. I sank onto my sofa, trembling from the confrontation, even though no words had been exchanged. This was just the beginning of Robert's attempts to regain control. He would be back, perhaps with Diana next time. They might try different tactics, guilt, manipulation, even feigned concern for my mental health. I needed to accelerate my plans. I picked up my phone and called Eleanor. "Ellie, it's me. I need to move up my timeline. How soon can you have that guest room ready?" Eleanor didn't hesitate. "The room's already ready, honey. Come whenever you need to." "How about this Friday?" "Perfect. I'll stock up on margarita mix. We'll have a proper welcome to Florida party, just the two of us." I felt a rush of gratitude for this steadfast friend who asked no questions, who simply opened her home and heart without hesitation. "Thank you, Ellie. I'll book a flight tonight, direct to Sarasota if possible. I'll pick you up at the airport." "Oh, Maggie, I know the circumstances are awful, but I can't wait to see you." The warmth in her voice was a balm to my battered spirit. "I can't wait to see you too, and Ellie. Don't tell anyone I'm coming. Not even mutual friends. It's important. Mum's the word. Your secret is safe with me." After we hung up, I immediately booked a one-way ticket to Sarasota for Friday morning. The act of purchasing the ticket, of committing financially to my plan, sent another surge of determination through me. This was happening. I was really leaving. Next, I called Harriet Klein to update her on my accelerated timeline. "I need all the legal documents completed before Friday morning," I explained. "I'm leaving sooner than expected." "Did something happen?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "Robert showed up at my apartment today. He was quite angry about the financial changes. I think it's best if I'm gone before he returns." "I understand completely. I'll have everything ready for you to sign by tomorrow afternoon. And Margaret, I think you're making the right decision." "Thank you, Harriet. That means a lot." My final call of the evening was to a local moving company. I arranged for the few boxes I wanted to keep to be shipped to Eleanor's address in Florida. The rest would be donated or discarded before I left. As I prepared for bed that night, I took a final look at the few family photographs I had decided to keep, mostly older ones from when Robert was a child and teenager, before money and status became his driving forces. In these images, he was still the sweet, curious boy I had raised, the son who had once made me Mother's Day cards with earnest declarations of "best mom ever" written in crayon. Where had that boy gone? At what point had he transformed into the cold, entitled man who could wish death upon his own mother? Had it been a gradual change I'd been too close to notice, or had there been a defining moment when his values shifted so dramatically? I would probably never know. What mattered now was not understanding Robert's transformation, but responding to the reality of who he had become. And the reality was that he saw me as nothing more than a financial resource, one that in his ideal world would continue providing indefinitely and then conveniently die, leaving him everything. "Not going to happen," I whispered to the photograph, running my finger over the image of the boy who once loved me so completely. "Not this time." I placed the photos back in their box and closed the lid. It was time to let go of the past and face the future, a future I was finally creating for myself. Wednesday dawned clear and crisp, a perfect fall day in New England. I had a lengthy to-do list, but felt energized rather than overwhelmed. Each task completed was another step toward freedom. My first stop was the bank, where I withdrew $5,000 in cash, enough to cover any unexpected expenses during my transition, but not so much as to be unwieldy. I then visited the post office to set up mail forwarding to a P.O. box I'd rented in Eleanor's name in Florida. This way, Robert wouldn't be able to track me through change of address records. At noon, I met with Harriet Klein to sign the new legal documents. She had worked miracles getting everything prepared so quickly. "These documents officially revoke Robert's power of attorney and designate Eleanor Green in his place," she explained, pointing to the first stack of papers. "This one is your updated will, removing Robert as executor and beneficiary, and these are the trust documents for your grandchildren's educational funds." I signed everywhere indicated, my signature becoming stronger and more confident with each document. By the time I finished, I felt as though I'd signed a Declaration of Independence, which, in many ways, I had. "I'll file these with the appropriate offices today," Harriet assured me. "By the time you leave on Friday, everything will be official." "Thank you, Harriet. I can't express how much your quick work means to me." She placed her hand over mine. "Margaret, may I speak frankly?" I nodded. "I've been practicing family law for 30 years. I've seen countless parents exploited by their adult children, financially, emotionally, sometimes even physically. Few have the courage to do what you're doing." She squeezed my hand. "You deserve this fresh start. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself." Her words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "I won't," I promised. As I left Harriet's office, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Curious, I opened it. "Grandma, it's Emma. Mom gave me this old phone to use for emergencies. Why aren't you answering Dad's calls? He's really mad. He says you're being selfish, and we might lose our house because of you. Is that true?" My heart constricted painfully. Using Emma to manipulate me. How low would Robert and Diana sink? I considered not responding, but Emma was just a child caught in the middle of adult problems. She deserved some explanation, however limited. After careful thought, I typed, "Emma, I love you very much. Your dad and I have some grown-up disagreements about money that we need to work out. You won't lose your house, your parents have good jobs and can take care of you. Please focus on school and being a kid. Love, Grandma." I hesitated before sending, wondering if Robert and Diana were reading over Emma's shoulder, using her as a pawn in their manipulation. But in the end, I pressed send. If this was to be my last communication with my granddaughter for some time, I wanted it to be reassuring. No response came. I hoped Emma had received my message of love, even if her parents intercepted it. Back at my apartment, I continued packing, focusing now on the practical necessities for my new life in Florida. Warmer clothes could stay behind. Lightweight, casual items would serve me better in Sarasota. I was ruthless in my sorting, questioning the necessity of each item I considered taking. Did I really need 12 coffee mugs, 3 winter coats, 5 pairs of dress shoes I rarely wore? By evening, my take to Florida pile had shrunk further, while the donate pile had grown substantially. The less I decided to bring, the lighter I felt, as if the physical unburdening mirrored an emotional one. The doorbell rang just as I was sealing another donation box. This time, my peephole revealed Diana standing in the hallway, her expression arranged in a mask of concern. For a brief moment, I considered not answering. But hiding wouldn't solve anything, and I was tired of avoidance. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. "Margaret," Diana said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, "I've been so worried about you. May I come in?" Without waiting for an answer, she brushed past me into the apartment, then stopped abruptly, taking in the boxes and sparse furnishings. "What's going on here? Are you moving?" "Hello, Diana," I said calmly, closing the door. "Yes, I'm making some changes." Her eyes narrowed. "What kind of changes? And why haven't you been answering our calls? Robert is beside himself with worry." "Is he?" I asked mildly. "Or is he beside himself because his financial support system is suddenly unavailable?" Diana's mask slipped for a moment, revealing the calculation beneath. She quickly recovered, her face settling into lines of practiced concern. "Margaret, I don't know what's happened, but clearly there's been some misunderstanding. Robert loves you deeply. We all do. If something's upset you, we should discuss it as a family." "There's no misunderstanding, Diana," I replied, my voice steady. "Robert made his feelings quite clear when he told me the best birthday gift I could give him would be my death." Diana flinched, then recovered. "All that. He was just frustrated, Margaret. You know how Robert gets when he's stressed about money. He didn't mean it." "Didn't he?" I moved to the window, putting some distance between us. Strange, because it seemed to perfectly encapsulate how you both have treated me for years, as a resource to be used, not a person to be loved. "That's not fair," Diana protested, though her eyes darted nervously to the boxes labeled Donate. "We've always included you in family events, holidays." "When it was convenient," I interrupted, "or when you needed something. A babysitter for the twins, money for their private school, a loan for your cosmetic surgery." Diana's face hardened, the pretense of affection dropping away entirely. "So that's what this is about? Money? You're punishing us because Robert said something stupid in the heat of the moment?" "This isn't punishment, Diana. This is me finally recognizing that I've allowed myself to be exploited for too long. I'm 78 years old. I deserve to enjoy whatever time I have left without constant financial and emotional drainage." "And what about your grandchildren?" Diana demanded, playing her trump card. "They'll be devastated that their grandmother has abandoned them." "The same grandchildren who barely looked up from their tablets when I visited? The ones who haven't called or visited me in months unless you needed a free babysitter?" I shook my head. "I've set up educational trusts for them. That's more than sufficient." Diana's expression turned ugly. "You won't get away with this. Robert's already talking to a lawyer. Your behavior is erratic, possibly even delusional. At your age, cognitive decline—" "Stop right there," I said sharply. "I've already seen my attorney and had a complete cognitive assessment performed. I'm of completely sound mind, Diana. My decisions are legal, rational, and final." She stared at me, clearly not having expected this level of preparation. "This isn't over," she said finally. "Robert won't stand for it. Robert doesn't have a choice. Now I think you should leave." For a moment, I thought she might refuse. Then, with a final venomous glare, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I sank onto the sofa, my legs suddenly unsteady. The confrontation had been draining, but also strangely empowering. I had stood my ground. I had spoken truth to the woman who had helped isolate me from my son and grandchildren. I had refused to be manipulated or intimidated. And yet, there was sadness, too. Diana's visit had confirmed that there was no misunderstanding, no heat-of-the-moment explanation for Robert's cruelty. They viewed me as nothing but a financial resource, one they were desperate to retain access to. I thought about Diana's parting threat. What might Robert do next? Claim I was mentally incompetent? Try to force his way into my apartment? Show up at the bank to contest the account changes? None of these possibilities changed my resolve, but they did reinforce the urgency of my departure. I needed to be gone before Robert could escalate further. I picked up my phone and called the moving company. "I'd like to move up the pickup of my boxes to tomorrow if possible." "Let me check the schedule," the dispatcher said. After a brief pause, she continued, "We can have someone there between 2 and 4 p.m. tomorrow. Would that work?" "That would be perfect, thank you." Next, I called the airline and changed my flight from Friday to Thursday morning. Tomorrow, the change fee was steep, but worth every penny for the peace of mind it would bring. Finally, I texted Eleanor, "Plans changed. Arriving tomorrow around noon. Is that still okay?" Her response came almost immediately. "Absolutely. The margaritas will be ready. Can't wait to you, brave lady." Brave. Was that what I was being? It didn't feel like bravery so much as survival. For too long, I had allowed my sense of maternal obligation to override my instinct for self-preservation. Now, with the scales finally fallen from my eyes, I was simply doing what any organism does when threatened, removing myself from danger. I spent the evening finishing my packing and cleaning the apartment. I wanted to leave the place in good condition, partly out of respect for the landlord who had always been fair with me, and partly to deny Robert the satisfaction of thinking I'd left in a chaotic emotional rush. As I wiped down the kitchen counters, I found myself actually humming, an old favorite song from my youth. The simple melody lifted my spirits further. When was the last time I had felt light enough to hum? I couldn't remember. Before bed, I wrote 2 letters. The first was to my landlord, explaining that I was terminating my lease early and enclosing a check for the remaining 3 months as required by our agreement. The second was to Sophia, thanking her for her friendship and her delicious cookies, explaining that I had to leave suddenly and wishing her well. I placed both letters in envelopes and set them on the kitchen counter to be delivered tomorrow before I left. Then, with a sense of completion and readiness, I went to bed for my last night in Boston, the city where I had been born, raised, married, become a mother, and grown old. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter in a new place. I closed my eyes, surprisingly at peace with the dramatic changes ahead. The harsh buzz of my alarm clock woke me at 5:30 a.m. For a moment, I was disoriented, wondering why I'd set it so early. Then the events of the past few days came flooding back, along with the realization today was the day I disappeared from my old life. I showered quickly and dressed in comfortable travel clothes, loose black pants, a light blue blouse, and slip-on shoes that would be easy to remove at airport security. My carry-on suitcase was already packed with essentials for the first few days. The rest would follow when the moving company delivered my boxes. After a light breakfast and a final check of the apartment to ensure I hadn't forgotten anything important, I called for a taxi. While waiting, I placed the letters I'd written last night in Sophia's mailbox and under the superintendent's door. The taxi arrived promptly at 7 a.m. Logan Airport, International Terminal, I instructed the driver. This was a deliberate misdirection. Once at the airport, I would make my way to the domestic terminal for my flight to Florida. But if Robert somehow tracked the taxi company's records, he would be led to believe I'd left the country. As the taxi pulled away from the curb, I resisted the urge to look back at the apartment building. That chapter was closed. Instead, I focused on the road ahead, both literally and figuratively. The driver, a chatty middle-aged man with a thick Boston accent, tried to engage me in conversation. Headed somewhere nice for vacation? Not exactly, I replied. I'm moving. Moving out of Boston? In retirement? Smart move. The winters here'll kill ya eventually. He laughed at his own joke. Where you headed? Somewhere warm, I hope. Yes, somewhere warm, I agreed, deliberately vague. He seemed to sense my reluctance to share details and switched to talking about the Red Sox's prospects for next seasons. I was grateful for the one-sided conversation that required only occasional nods or murmurs of agreement from me. At the international terminal, I paid the driver, including a generous tip, and wheeled my suitcase into the bustling building. Once the taxi had departed, I walked through the terminal and followed signs to the shuttle that would take me to the domestic flights area. My flight to Sarasota wasn't until 10:15, giving me plenty of time to navigate this subterfuge. I felt a bit ridiculous, like a character in a spy novel, but after Diana's threatening visit yesterday, I wasn't taking any chances. In the domestic terminal, I checked in, received my boarding pass, and made my way through security without incident. By 9 a.m., I was settled at my gate with a cup of tea and a cinnamon roll from a nearby bakery stand, a small indulgence to celebrate this momentous day. As passengers began gathering for boarding, I kept a watchful eye on the terminal entrance, half expecting to see Robert rushing toward me, red-faced and demanding, but no familiar figure appeared. My precautions seemed to have worked. Boarding began at 9:45, and I joined the line for Group B. As I handed my boarding pass to the gate agent, a strange feeling washed over me, not fear or anxiety, but an almost dizzying sense of liberation. I was really doing this. I was walking away from decades of emotional subjugation toward a future of my own choosing. "Enjoy your flight, Mrs. Wilson," the gate agent said, returning my boarding pass with a smile. "Thank you," I replied. "I certainly intend to." The flight to Sarasota was smooth and uneventful. I spent most of it gazing out the window at the clouds below, marveling at how my perspective had changed so dramatically in just a few days. The woman who boarded this plane was fundamentally different from the one who had arrived at her son's birthday celebration less than a week ago. Stronger, more determined, no longer willing to accept crumbs of affection in exchange for financial support. As the plane began its descent into Sarasota, the landscape below transformed from patchwork farmland to the distinct geography of coastal Florida, winding waterways, clusters of palm trees, gleaming white beaches. It was beautiful, yes, but more importantly, it was new, uncharted territory, a place with no painful memories or established patterns of behavior. The plane touched down at 1:37 p.m., slightly behind schedule due to air traffic. As passengers stood to retrieve their belongings, I remained seated, allowing the rush to subside before attempting to navigate the narrow aisle with my carry-on. When I finally disembarked and made my way to the arrivals area, I spotted Eleanor immediately. At 76, she was still the vibrant, vivacious woman I remembered, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob, her smile wide and welcoming as she waved enthusiastically. "Maggie," she exclaimed, enveloping me in a tight hug. "You made it." "Oh, look at you, still as beautiful as ever." I returned her embrace, emotion suddenly welling up in my throat. "Ellie, it's so good to see you." She held me at arm's length, studying my face. "You look exhausted, poor thing. Let's get you home. I've got the car in short-term parking." As we walked through the terminal, Eleanor chattered happily about her retirement community, the activities available, the friends she was eager to introduce me to. I let her words wash over me, grateful for the normalcy and genuine warmth after days of tension and confrontation. Eleanor's car was a sporty red convertible, the top already down despite the mild temperature. "Florida living," she explained with a wink, as she helped stow my suitcase in the trunk. "If it's above 60 degrees, the top stays down. House rule." As we drove away from the airport, the Florida sunshine warm on my face and Eleanor's cheerful voice filling the car, I felt the last remnants of tension begin to dissolve. I had done it. I had escaped. I was free. "So," Eleanor said, glancing at me as she navigated onto the highway, "tell me everything, and I mean everything, Margaret Wilson. I want to know exactly what that ungrateful son of yours said and did, and how you found the courage to walk away after all these years." And so I told her everything from Robert's cruel birthday wish to Diana's threatening visit, from the financial manipulations I'd uncovered to the legal protections I'd put in place. Eleanor listened intently, occasionally letting out a gasp or a muttered "that bastard" when the story was particularly painful. "And now here I am," I concluded as we turned into a gated community of pastel-colored condominiums, surrounded by palm trees and flowering bushes, starting over at 78. "Better late than never," Eleanor declared, pulling into a parking space in front of a cheerful coral-colored building. "And you're not starting from scratch, Maggie. You have me. You have your pension. You have all your intelligence and skills and experience. This isn't an ending, it's a beginning." Her words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Thank you, Ellie, for everything." "Oh, stop that," she said briskly, though her own eyes looked suspiciously moist. "No crying aloud on day one. That's another house rule. Now come on, let's get you settled, and then we'll have those margaritas I promised." Eleanor's condo was exactly as I'd imagined it would be. Bright, airy, and quintessentially Floridian, with wicker furniture, tropical print cushions, and shell-themed decor throughout. The guest room she'd prepared for me was equally charming, with a comfortable queen-sized bed, a small writing desk, and a window overlooking a courtyard garden. "It's perfect," I told her, setting my suitcase on the luggage rack she'd thoughtfully provided. "Just temporary, remember," she reminded me. "There are 3 units coming available in this complex next month. I've already put in a good word for you with the property manager. You'll have your own place before you know it." The idea of my own home in this peaceful, sunny place sent a thrill of anticipation through me. I can hardly wait. "Well, in the meantime, you get settled in here, bathrooms through that door. I've put out fresh towels. When you're ready, come out to the lanai." Those margaritas aren't going to drink themselves. Left alone, I unpacked my few belongings, hanging clothes in the closet and arranging toiletries in the bathroom. The simple domestic tasks helped ground me in the reality of my new situation. This wasn't a dream or a fantasy. I had really done it, escaped a toxic relationship, moved to a new state, and taken the first steps toward a life of my own choosing. I changed into fresh clothes, a lightweight cotton dress more suited to the Florida climate than my travel outfit, and went to join Eleanor on the lanai, a screened porch overlooking a small, beautifully maintained garden. She was already there, 2 frosty margarita glasses on the table between comfortable-looking wicker chairs. "Perfect timing," she said, gesturing for me to sit. "I just finished making these beauties, top-shelf tequila only for my brave friend." I settled into the chair and took a sip of the cocktail. It was delicious, tart and sweet and strong all at once. That's exactly what I needed. "Told you," Eleanor said, raising her glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping our drinks and listening to the gentle sounds of the garden birds calling, palm fronds rustling in the breeze, the distant laughter of neighbors enjoying the pleasant afternoon. "You know what I keep thinking?" I said finally. "How strange it is that Robert's cruelty turned out to be the greatest gift he could have given me." Eleanor looked at me questioningly. If he hadn't said those horrible words, I might have continued in that pattern forever, giving and giving until there was nothing left of me. His cruelty shocked me into seeing the truth and finding the strength to leave. "That's a remarkably generous way of looking at it," Eleanor observed. "But you're right. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives create openings for the best changes. I just wish—" I trailed off, uncertain how to express the complex tangle of emotions I felt. "You wish you could have had both," Eleanor finished for me. "A loving relationship with your son and this new freedom." "Yes," I admitted. "Is that foolish of me?" "Not foolish. Human. We all want to be loved by our children. But Maggie, honey, what Robert was offering wasn't love. It was exploitation dressed up as family obligation." I nodded slowly, accepting the truth of her words. "I know that now. I just wonder where I went wrong with him. How did I raise a child who could treat his mother that way?" Eleanor reached over to squeeze my hand. "Don't go down that rabbit hole, Maggie. Some people just turn out wrong despite the best parenting in the world. And from what you've told me, that wife of his has been a terrible influence." "Maybe," I said, unconvinced, "but I must have played some part in how he turned out." "Well, even if you did make mistakes and show me a parent who hasn't, that doesn't mean you deserved his treatment. Nothing could justify what he said to you." She was right, of course. Whatever parenting missteps I might have made over the years, nothing justified Robert wishing me dead. Nothing justified years of financial exploitation and emotional manipulation. "Enough about Robert," Eleanor declared, refilling our glasses. "Let's talk about your new life here. Tomorrow, I'm taking you to meet the gang at water aerobics. You'll love them. And Sunday is the community potluck. Perfect opportunity to meet your future neighbors." As Eleanor outlined the active social calendar awaiting me, I felt a growing sense of excitement. Book clubs, art classes, volunteer opportunities, day trips to nearby attractions, a whole world of experiences I'd denied myself while focused solely on Robert's needs and demands. "It sounds wonderful," I said sincerely. "All of it." "It is wonderful," Eleanor assured me, And do you know what the best part is?
What?
Every single thing on that calendar is something you're doing for yourself, not because someone is guilting you or manipulating you or demanding it from you, just for you, Maggie, because you deserve a life filled with things that bring you joy. Her words struck deep, illuminating a truth I'd lost sight of long ago. I did deserve joy. I deserved friendships and activities and experiences that nourished my soul rather than depleted it. I deserved to live my remaining years as fully and richly as possible. To joy, I said, raising my glass once more. To joy, Eleanor echoed, her eyes twinkling, and to showing that son of yours exactly what he lost when he wished you dead, a vibrant, amazing woman with years of living still to do. We clinked glasses, and as the sun began to set over the Florida landscape, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt the first genuine happiness I'd experienced in years. This was just the beginning of my new story, one in which I, not Robert, would determine the plot. My first month in Florida passed in a whirlwind of activity. True to her word, Eleanor introduced me to her wide circle of friends, all of whom welcomed me warmly into their social activities. I joined the water aerobics class that met 3 mornings a week, signed up for a beginner's painting course at the community center, and became a regular at the Thursday afternoon book club held in the complex's clubhouse. The contrast to my isolated life in Boston was stark and wonderful. There, my days had revolved around waiting for Robert's calls, worrying about his financial demands, and dwelling on his increasingly infrequent visits. Here, my calendar was filled with engagements I genuinely looked forward to, conversations that stimulated my mind, and new friendships that nourished my spirit. Most surprisingly, I discovered that I loved Florida living. I had always imagined myself a New England woman through and through, but the constant sunshine, the vibrant colors, the relaxed pace, all suited me far better than I could have predicted. Each morning I woke to birds singing outside my window and sunlight streaming through the curtains, a natural alarm clock that started my day on a positive note. Eleanor proved to be not just a generous host, but also an excellent guide to my new life. She seemed to know exactly when to include me in activities and when to give me space to process the enormous changes I'd experienced. We fell into an easy rhythm of shared meals, morning walks, and evening conversations on the line that reminded me of our early friendship as young teachers. "You're blooming," she told me one evening, as we sat sipping iced tea and watching the sunset. "I've known you for 50 years, Maggie, and I've never seen you look so luminous." I laughed at the poetic description. Luminous? At 78? I think that's the iced tea talking. "I'm serious," she insisted. "You're standing straighter, laughing more. Your whole face has relaxed. It's like watching someone emerge from a cage they've lived in so long they'd forgotten what freedom feels like." Her observation struck a chord. I had been caged by my own sense of obligation, by Robert's manipulation, by years of putting everyone else's needs before my own. Now each day brought new discoveries about who Margaret Wilson was when she wasn't defined solely as Robert's mother or the family ATM. I discovered I had opinions about art, preferences in music, political views that had nothing to do with trying to please others. I found that I enjoyed spicy food, something I'd avoided for years because Robert complained about the smell. I learned that I could be outspoken in book club discussions, that my insights were valued, that my voice mattered. And I learned that I was financially competent, more than competent, actually. With Harriet Klein's help, I had arranged for my pension and Social Security to be deposited directly into my new Florida bank account. I had invested a portion of my savings in a conservative portfolio recommended by a financial advisor Eleanor trusted, and I had created a monthly budget that allowed me to live comfortably within my means without anxiety about unexpected demands from Robert. It was, as Eleanor had noted, a late-life renaissance I never could have imagined a month ago. The only shadow on my new life was the knowledge that back in Boston, Robert was undoubtedly still trying to find me. I had maintained my digital silence, not accessing any of my old email accounts or social media profiles that might give away my location. But I knew my son. He would not give up easily on his primary source of financial support. My concerns were confirmed when Eleanor came home from checking her mail one afternoon, her expression troubled. "What is it?" I asked, looking up from the novel I was reading. She hesitated, then handed me an envelope. "This came today. It's addressed to me, but, well, you should see it." The envelope bore Eleanor's name and address, written in a hand I recognized immediately. Robert's. My heart raced as I opened it and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. "Dear Mrs. Green," it began, "you may not remember me, but I'm Margaret Wilson's son, Robert. I'm writing because I'm desperately worried about my mother. She disappeared from her apartment nearly a month ago after exhibiting increasingly erratic behavior. Her neighbors mentioned she might have gone to Florida to visit an old friend, and I recalled her speaking of you over the years. If my mother is with you, please urge her to contact me immediately. Her doctors are concerned about possible cognitive issues affecting her judgment. She made several impulsive financial decisions before disappearing and left without telling anyone where she was going. This is completely out of character for her and suggests a potential medical emergency. I've enclosed my contact information. Please call me day or night with any information about my mother's whereabouts. Her family is frantic with worry. Sincerely, Robert Wilson." I lowered the letter, my hands trembling with anger. Cognitive issues, medical emergency, erratic behavior. I spat the words out. He's setting the stage to have me declared incompetent if he finds me. Eleanor took the letter back, her expression grim. "That's how I read it too, establishing a paper trail of concern about your mental capacity to challenge the financial changes you've made. And he's not even creative about it," I said bitterly, "using the same tactics Diana threatened me with back in Boston. What do you want to do?" I considered the question carefully. "Nothing. We do absolutely nothing. Don't respond. Don't acknowledge receipt of the letter. Don't give him any information at all." Eleanor nodded approvingly. "I think that's wise. Engaging would only give him something to work with. Besides," I added, "I've already taken precautions against exactly this kind of maneuver. The cognitive assessment Harriet arranged, the legal documentation of my wishes, the witnesses to my sound mental state, all of it would make it very difficult for Robert to succeed with this strategy." "Good for you," Eleanor said, folding the letter and putting it back in its envelope. "Want me to burn this? I've got a fondue pot we could use as a ceremonial pyre." That made me laugh despite my anger. Tempting, but no, keep it somewhere safe. If Robert escalates, it might be useful evidence of his tactics. Later that night, as I lay in bed thinking about Robert's letter, I realized something important. I wasn't afraid. Angry, yes. Disgusted by his manipulative tactics, absolutely, but not afraid. A month ago, Such a blatant attempt to pathologize my independence would have terrified me. Now it merely strengthened my resolve to protect the new life I was building. The next morning, I received wonderful news that further reinforced my decision to stand firm against Robert's machinations. The property manager of Eleanor's complex called to tell me that a one-bedroom unit had become available unexpectedly when the previous tenant had to move to assisted living. Would I be interested in viewing it that afternoon? Absolutely, I said, excitement bubbling up inside me. The apartment was perfect, slightly smaller than Eleanor's, but with the same bright, airy feel and a lovely view of the community garden. The rent was well within my budget, and I could move in as soon as the following week. I'll take it, I told the property manager without hesitation. As I signed the rental agreement, I felt a profound sense of putting down roots in my new life. This wasn't a temporary escape or a vacation from reality. This was my home now, my community, my chosen path. That evening, as Eleanor and I celebrated my new apartment with a special dinner at her favorite local restaurant, he raised her wine glass in a toast. To Margaret Wilson, she said, who learned at 78 what some people never learn in a lifetime, that true courage isn't facing death, but choosing to live fully and authentically, no matter what anyone else thinks. To choosing life, I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. And as the Florida sunset painted the sky in glorious colors outside the restaurant window, I knew with absolute certainty that I had indeed made the right choice. Not just in leaving Robert, but in embracing this new chapter with open arms and an open heart. The best birthday gift, it turned out, was the one I had given myself: freedom. Over the next 5 months, my new life took deeper root. I moved into my own apartment, furnishing it with a careful blend of a few treasured pieces from Boston and new items that reflected my evolving taste. Gone were the heavy curtains and dark wood furniture that had filled my old apartment. In their place came light, gauzy drapes that allowed the Florida sunshine to fill every corner, comfortable wicker chairs with bright cushions, and potted palms that thrived in the warm climate. My days fell into a pleasant rhythm of social engagements, volunteer work at the local library, and quiet time spent reading or painting on my small private patio. I made new friends beyond Eleanor's circle, people who knew me only as Margaret, the retired teacher from Boston, not as Robert's perpetually exploded mother. Perhaps most significantly, I discovered a surprising talent for watercolor painting, encouraged by my Tuesday morning art class in Slexter. My renderings of Florida landscapes, beaches at sunset, palm trees silhouetted against azure skies, tropical flowers in vibrant bloom, drew genuine admiration from classmates and even earned a place in the community center's spring art show. "You have a real eye for color and composition," my instructor, a retired art professor named Carlos, told me after class one day. "Have you ever considered showing your work more widely? The gallery downtown has a senior artists showcase every summer. The idea that something I created purely for joy might be worthy of public display was startling and thrilling." "Do you really think my paintings are good enough?" I asked. "Absolutely," Carlos affirmed. "Your work has emotional resonance. It captures not just the visual aspects of Florida, but the feeling of being here, the warmth, the tranquility, the vibrant life." I promised to think about it, carrying his praise with me like a precious gift. How strange that at 78, I was just beginning to discover artistic talents that had lain dormant my entire life. Would I ever have found this part of myself if I had remained in Boston, perpetually at Robert's beck and call? It seemed unlikely. The financial independence I had established proved sustainable. Without the constant drain of supporting Robert's lifestyle, my pension and modest investments provided more than enough for my needs. I even found myself with a small surplus each month, which I set aside for future travels. Another dream I was finally allowing myself to contemplate. Eleanor remained my closest friend and confidant, but our relationship had evolved as I grew more independent. We still enjoyed our morning walks and frequent dinners together, but I no longer relied on her guidance for every aspect of my new life. I was standing firmly on my own feet, making my own decisions, finding my own way. The shadow of Robert's pursuit had not completely disappeared. 2 more letters arrived for Eleanor, each increasingly urgent in tone, each painting a more alarming picture of my supposed mental decline and the family's desperate concern. We filed these away with the first, still maintaining our policy of non-engagement. In late April, however, the situation escalated. I was working in the community garden I'd adopted a small plot where I grew herbs and flowers. When Eleanor approached, her expression troubled. "Maggie," she said quietly, "we need to talk. Robert's here." My trowel slipped from suddenly numb fingers. "Here? In Sarasota?" She nodded grimly. "He's at the management office right now, showing them family photos and claiming he's desperately searching for his vulnerable elderly mother who wandered away from home due to cognitive decline." A cold knot of fear formed in my stomach, but I forced it away. I had anticipated this might happen eventually. I was prepared. "What did the management office tell him?" "Nothing, thank goodness. Patricia at the front desk knows our situation. Remember when I took you to meet her specifically after his first letter arrived? She called me immediately and is stalling him while we decide what to do." I brushed the dirt from my gardening gloves and stood up, my mind racing through options. I need to confront him, on my terms, not his. If I keep hiding, it only strengthens his narrative that I'm confused or being manipulated. Eleanor looked concerned. "Are you sure? You don't have to face him at all if you don't want to." "I'm sure," I said firmly, "but not alone. Will you come with me? As a witness?" "Of course," Eleanor replied without hesitation. "And should we call Harriet first? Have her on standby?" It was an excellent suggestion. Harriet Klein had helped me establish a relationship with a Florida attorney who specialized in elder law, ensuring my legal protections extended to my new home state. "Yes," I agreed. "Let's call Sarah from the condo. I want her advice before I face Robert." 20 minutes later, freshly changed from my gardening clothes and fortified by a brief conversation with Sarah Martinez, my Florida attorney, I walked into the management office with Eleanor at my side. Sarah was already on her way to join us, but had advised me I could begin the conversation without her. Robert was standing at the reception desk, his back to the door. Even from behind, I could see the tension in his shoulders, the impatient way he shifted his weight from foot to foot, body language I recognized from countless instances when he wasn't getting his way quickly enough. "Hello, Robert," I said calmly. He whirled around, his expression cycling rapidly from shock to relief to something calculating and cold that he quickly masked with a concerned smile. "Mom, thank God!" He moved toward me as if to embrace me, but I took a deliberate step back. "We've been worried sick. What are you doing in Florida? Why didn't you tell anyone where you were going?" I regarded him steadily, searching his face for any genuine concern beneath the performance. I found none. "I'm quite well, as you can see," I replied, my voice even. I've relocated to Sarasota permanently. It's a decision I made carefully and independently, and one I'm very happy with. His eyes narrowed slightly. Mom, you're not thinking clearly. You disappeared without telling anyone, abandoned your apartment, cut off contact with your family. This isn't like you at all. We need to get you home where your doctors can evaluate what's happening. I have doctors here, Robert. Excellent ones. I had a complete physical and cognitive assessment shortly after arriving, in fact. Would you like to see the results? I held his gaze unflinchingly. They'll confirm what I'm telling you now. I am of completely sound mind and body, making my own decisions about my own life. Robert's facade of concern slipped a bit, irritation showing through. This isn't just about your health, Mom. It's about what you did before you left, freezing my line of credit, emptying our joint account, changing your will. Those aren't the actions of someone thinking rationally. On the contrary, I replied, they're the actions of someone who finally recognized a long pattern of financial exploitation and decided to end it. His face flushed dark red. Financial exploitation? On your son. Everything was by mutual agreement. Was it mutual agreement when you told me the best gift I could give you for your birthday would be my death? The office went completely silent. Patricia at the front desk audibly gasped. Even Eleanor, who had heard the story before, seemed shocked to hear it stated so baldly. Robert recovered quickly. I never said that. You're confused. Mixing things up. This is exactly what I'm worried about. I'm not confused about what happened on October 12th in your kitchen, Robert. You told me, and I quote, "The best gift would be if you died, Mom. Then we'd all finally be free." Those words are burned into my memory. They were the catalyst for every decision I've made since. Robert turned to Eleanor and Patricia, his expression beseeching. She's obviously confused. Mixing up something I might have said in frustration with some cruel intention. My mother and I have always been close. I would never save it, I interrupted. My attorney will be here shortly. You can explain to her why you're harassing a competent adult who has chosen to relocate to a different state. You can explain why you've been spreading false claims about my mental capacity to neighbors, property managers, and through the mail, which incidentally could constitute elder abuse and mail fraud. The color drained from Robert's face. Attorney? Mom, we don't need attorneys. This is a family matter. No, Robert, this stopped being a family matter when you decided I was worth more to you dead than alive. Now it's a legal matter. As if on cue, the office door opened and Sarah Martinez entered, briefcase in hand, her professional demeanor unmistakable.
Mrs. Wilson, I'm Sarah Martinez. We spoke earlier.
She turned to Robert with a cool smile. And you must be Robert Wilson. I understand you've been making some troubling claims about your mother's cognitive capacity. Robert looked from Sarah to me, his expression hardening. So this is how it's going to be? You'll throw away 48 years of family for some retirement fantasy in Florida? No, Robert, I said quietly. You threw away our family when you decided I was nothing but a financial resource to be drained dry and then discarded. I'm simply choosing to spend my remaining years with people who value me as a person, not an ATM. What about the twins? Your own grandchildren, don't they matter to you? It was a low blow, designed to trigger my guilt. 6 months ago, it would have worked. Now I recognize the manipulation for what it was. I've established educational trusts for Emma and Ethan. As you well know, Beyond that, you and Diana have made it clear over the years that my relationship with them is entirely at your convenience. When was the last time they called me just to talk? When was the last time you brought them to visit without needing something from me? Robert had no answer for this, his mouth working silently as he struggled to find another angle of attack. Sarah stepped forward. Mr. Wilson, your mother has taken the precaution of having comprehensive cognitive assessments performed by qualified professionals here in Florida. She has updated her legal documents with proper representation in both Massachusetts and Florida. She is clearly of sound mind and making her own choices. Any further attempts to challenge her capacity without legitimate medical cause could be construed as elder abuse and harassment. This is ridiculous, Robert sputtered. I'm trying to protect my mother. No, I said firmly. You're trying to protect your access to my money. There's a significant difference. For a moment, Robert's mask dropped completely, revealing the cold calculation beneath. Then, with visible effort, he reassembled his concerned son expression. Mom, please, let's just talk. The two of us, without lawyers or neighbors or property managers. Let me take you to lunch. We can work this out. I almost smiled at the transparency of his attempt. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Robert. I have plans for lunch with friends from my painting class. This wasn't actually true, but it felt wonderfully empowering to prioritize myself over his demands, even in this small way. Robert's jaw tightened. Fine, if that's how you want it. He turned to go, then paused at the door. This isn't over, Mom. You can't just cut me out of your life after everything we've been through together. I didn't cut you out, Robert, I replied softly. You pushed me away. There's a significant difference there, too. After he stormed out, Eleanor wrapped her arm around my shoulders. Are you okay? I took a deep breath, assessing my emotional state. Surprisingly, I felt steady, shaken by the confrontation. Certainly, but not devastated or even particularly anxious. I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay. I've been dreading that moment for months, and now that it's happened, I feel relieved. You were magnificent, Eleanor declared. Absolutely magnificent. The way you stood your ground, I wish I'd had a video camera running. Sarah was more measured but equally supportive. You handled that extremely well, Mrs. Wilson. The clearer and more consistent you remain about your capacity and your choices, the harder it will be for your son to build any case against you. Will he try? I asked. Legally, I mean? Sarah considered the question. He might. People who are accustomed to control rarely surrender it without a fight. But based on what I just witnessed, he has no legitimate grounds. He's operating purely on entitlement and manipulation. What should I do next? I asked. Document everything, Sarah advised. Today's encounter, the letters he sent to Mrs. Green, any phone calls or contact attempts. Create a paper trail of his behavior and your consistent responses, and continue living your life exactly as you have been, engaged, active, clearly capable of managing your affairs. After thanking Patricia for her help and scheduling a follow-up appointment with Sarah, Eleanor and I walked back to our condos, the Florida sunshine warm on our faces despite the emotional chill of the encounter. You really are going to your painting class for lunch, aren't you? Eleanor asked. I smiled. Absolutely. The last thing I'm going to do is let Robert's ambush disrupt my plans or dampen my spirits. Besides, I need to talk to Carlos about that gallery submission. Life goes on. My life on my terms. Eleanor squeezed my arm affectionately. That's my girl. True to my word, I attended the planned lunch with my painting classmates at a charming cafe near the community center. I said nothing about Robert's visit, choosing instead to fully engage in the lively discussion about the upcoming gallery opportunity. By the time I returned home in the late afternoon, the morning's confrontation felt distant, like a scene from someone else's life. That evening, as I sat on my patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, I reflected on the day's events. 6 months ago, a confrontation with Robert would have left me emotionally shattered for days, racked with guilt and anxiety. Today, I had faced him squarely, defended my choices calmly, and then gone about my day without allowing his attempted manipulation to derail my happiness. It wasn't that I felt nothing. There was sadness, certainly at the confirmation that my son valued my financial support more than my presence in his life. There was anger at his willingness to paint me as mentally incompetent to regain control. There was disappointment that he had learned nothing from these months of separation. But these feelings no longer defined or controlled me. They were simply emotions to be acknowledged, processed, and then set aside as I continued building my new life, a life richer and more fulfilling than I ever could have imagined at 78 years old. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared in the Florida sky, I made a quiet promise to myself. Robert's visit would not be a setback but a reaffirmation of my path. I had made the right choice in leaving Boston, in protecting myself financially and emotionally, in refusing being manipulated by false concern. The best gift I had ever given myself was the courage to walk away from a relationship that diminished me, and no one, not even my own son, would take that gift away. In the months that followed Robert's unwelcome visit, my life in Florida continued to flourish. I submitted 3 watercolors to the Senior Artist Showcase at the Downtown Gallery and was thrilled when all were accepted. The opening night reception in July marked a milestone in my new life, standing beside my paintings, wearing a flowing tropical print dress I would never have chosen in Boston, accepting compliments from strangers who saw me as an artist first, not just someone's mother or grandmother. "Your use of light is extraordinary," one gallery visitor told me, gesturing to my painting of a sunset over Sarasota Bay. "You've captured that magical moment when the sun touches the water." "Thank you," I replied, still unaccustomed to such praise for a talent I'd only recently discovered. "I'm relatively new to painting. I only started after moving to Florida last year." "Really? That makes your work even more impressive. What inspired you to begin at this stage of life?" The question gave me pause. What had inspired me? It wasn't simply having more time or living in a beautiful location, though those factors helped. It was something deeper. "Freedom," I said finally. "I found freedom to explore who I really am, not just who others expected me to be. Painting is part of that exploration." The woman nodded thoughtfully. "That's beautiful and brave. Many people never find that courage at any age." Her words stayed with me long after the exhibition ended. Brave. It was the second time someone had used that word to describe my late life transformation. Was it bravery that had propelled me from Boston to Florida, from exploitation to independence, from Robert's mother to simply Margaret? Perhaps. But it felt more like necessity, the inevitable response of a spirit that had been compressed for too long, finally expanding to its natural dimensions. August brought another pleasant surprise. A letter arrived from Emma, my granddaughter, sent directly to my new address. How she had obtained it, I wasn't sure, perhaps through social media searches or mutual connections. The envelope contained a handmade card featuring a watercolor painting of her own, clearly amateur but earnest, and a short note. "Dear Grandma," it read in a teenager's careful script, "I found out where you are from, a friend of Mom's who saw your paintings in a gallery in Florida. I wanted you to know I miss you and understand why you left. Dad was really mean to you. I heard him talking to Mom about what happened. I'm sorry. I like your paintings. I'm trying to learn watercolors too. Maybe someday I can visit you in Florida. Love, Emma." Tears blurred my vision as I read and reread the simple message. Emma, at 13, had shown more emotional intelligence and empathy than her father had demonstrated in our entire confrontation. She had sought me out, not to demand or manipulate, but simply to connect, to express affection, to acknowledge my experience. I wrote back the same day, sending her a small watercolor kit as a gift and assuring her that she would always be welcome in my home. I was careful not to disparage Robert or Diana while still validating her perception that I had been treated unfairly. I ended with an open invitation to visit during her school breaks if her parents would permit it, though I harbored few illusions about that possibility. September marked my 1-year anniversary in Florida. Eleanor insisted on celebrating with a small dinner party, inviting our closest friends from the community. As we gathered on her lanai, festooned with twinkling lights for the occasion, she proposed a toast. To Maggie, who arrived here 1 year ago today with 2 suitcases, a broken heart, and more courage than she realized. Look at her now, award-winning artist, beloved friend, independent woman extraordinaire. May the next year bring even more joy and discovery. "Hear, hear," echoed around the table as glasses clinked. Carlos, my painting instructor who had become a dear friend, added his own tribute. To the student who became a colleague, "Your journey reminds us all that it's never too late to discover new talents, make new friends, or reinvent oneself entirely." As the warm wishes continued around the table, I was struck by how thoroughly my life had transformed in just 12 months. These people, most of whom I'd known less than a year, saw me clearly and valued me genuinely. They celebrated my achievements, supported my growth, and expected nothing in return except authentic friendship. What a contrast to the transactional relationship Robert had established, where every interaction came with unspoken demands and obligations. Later that night, as I prepared for bed in my cozy condo, I took a moment to write in the journal I'd started keeping shortly after my arrival in Florida. I'd filled nearly 3 volumes in the past year, documenting not just events but emotions, reflections, and insights as I navigated my new life. 1 year, I wrote, 1 year since I walked away from a lifetime of putting others first. 1 year since I stopped being Robert's convenient source of funding and started being Margaret Wilson, artist, friend, independent spirit. The journey hasn't been without pain, confronting Robert, accepting the loss of daily contact with my grandchildren, acknowledging the wasted years of enabling, but the joy has far outweighed the sorrow. I wonder sometimes what would have happened if Robert had never spoken those cruel words on his birthday. Would I have continued in that pattern indefinitely? Would I have drained my savings, impoverished my later years, sacrificed every opportunity for growth and happiness at the altar of his endless demands? Almost certainly. In that sense, his cruelty was a perverse gift, the shock required to break a destructive pattern that might otherwise have continued until my death. The best birthday gift would be if you died, Mom. Those words freed me to live, truly live, perhaps for the first time since Robert was born. As I begin my 2nd year in Florida, I feel only gratitude for Eleanor's friendship, for this welcoming community, for the financial security I protected just in time, for the creative talents I've discovered, for the simple joy of waking each morning to sunshine and possibility rather than dread and obligation. Robert's birthday is next week. He'll be 49. I wonder if he ever thinks about what he said to me that day, if he ever regrets the words that changed both our lives forever. Somehow, I doubt it. In his mind, I'm still the selfish mother who abandoned him, who failed to fulfill my proper role as perpetual provider and support system. But I know the truth, and the truth has set me free. I closed the journal and turned out the light, settling into peaceful sleep in my Florida home, surrounded by paintings I'd created, books I'd chosen, a life I'd designed for myself outside my window. Palm trees rustled in the gentle night breeze, a soothing lullaby that reminded me I was exactly where I belonged. The best gift, it turned out, was the one I had finally given myself, the courage to begin again, to put my own needs first, to discover who Margaret Wilson really was when she was allowed to exist as herself, not merely as someone's mother, someone's financial support, someone's convenient resource. It had taken 78 years to learn this lesson, but now that I had, I intended to make the most of every moment of freedom, creativity, and joy that remained to me. After all, it's never too late to start living authentically, a truth I wished I could share with my younger self, but one I was profoundly grateful to have discovered at all. And perhaps someday I would share this wisdom with Emma, whose innocent watercolor attempts and heartfelt note suggested she might avoid her father's materialistic path. Perhaps she would visit Florida one day and see her grandmother not as a convenient source of gifts and money, but as a woman who had found the courage to choose life over exploitation, creativity over obligation, authenticity over appeasement. That would be a legacy worth leaving, not financial inheritance, but the living example of a woman who discovered in her 8th decade that the truest gift is the courage to begin again.